Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Employee Offboarding Organizational and Technical Considerations, with our special guests, Corina Linz and Martin Summers. My name is Silvio, and I'm a sales executive here at Syskit, and we'll soon be joined by our guests, as well as my colleague Boyan, who will be showing you a quick point demo right after our guest's presentation. So, many of you already know about us as a company, but for those who actually doesn't, let me briefly introduce you to, Syskit. So Syskit here is a software development company. We've been founded more than 12 years ago, and we currently develop products for Microsoft 365 governance, security, auditing, as well as for SharePoint on-premise administration. So SPDocket tool, some of you may have heard about it. We currently have over 3,000 customers all around the world, and some of those are quite a big names, as you can see from our slide here. And we're currently offering 5 products, including our famous SPDocket, which I just mentioned, and Syskit Point for Microsoft 365 governance, of which you'll be seeing the demo later today. Just before we actually start with everything, let me give you a few, housekeeping rules. So all registrants will receive a recording of the webinar, within a few days after the end. And after Corina and Martin's presentation, we will have a short demo of Syskit Point hosted by my colleague Boyan, and he will be showing you how Syskit Point can help you with employee offboarding and Office 365 governance. Right after that, we will have a Q&A session where our presenters here and us as well will answer any questions you may have for us. So throughout the entire presentation demo webinar, basically, please use the Q&A function on the right side of the screen and, well, ask your questions there. So, well, now we've come to the time for me to introduce our special guests we have here. So first of all, Corina Linz, she is a Microsoft 365 consultant with focus on improving business collaboration and productivity and increasing employee user acceptance for over 8 years now. She organizes the Microsoft Collaboration Setup in Munich and co-hosts the Change and Adoption Forum as well in Munich. She is also co-organizer of Call Up Days Munich. So Martin Summers here, our second guest, is an Office 365 specialist and Microsoft MVP who has over 14 years of experience implementing the full value of information worker solutions in any organization. Also in 2016, he launched Means 365 Coach, a portfolio video products helping end users on board with Office 365. He also does a consultancy via Belstra and has a podcast called Office 365 Distilled. So what else? I think I said everything I have from my side. I will now give a warm welcome to our presenters. So yeah, Corina, Martin, are you ready?
Of course.
Hi.
Of course.
Of course. Thank you,
Silvio,
Silvio, for the intro.
You're welcome.
All right. Cool. Let's get started. I'll just start sharing my screen, and if that works, let me know, Silvio, if you can see the presentation, or Corina, you can see it. All right. Cool beans. Nice. Thank you so much, Silvio, for introducing us. Telling that I've been working for 14 years makes me feel so old. Yeah, and thank you, Syskit, for the amazing opportunity for us to be here and to present how we see employee offboarding, because we always talk about employee onboarding, and that's super nice, because then people get new tools, they get new hardware, they get a t-shirt, whatever, but nobody ever talks about offboarding, and we all have to offboard at some point. Going pretty philosophical here for a second, but anyway, let's get going for this one. So on our agenda today, we've got a few small points. Why is it important to have a good offboarding process? We will go through some organizational and technical aspects, steps that you can take to graciously offboard an employee in a good way, and then we will end with some tips and tricks.
So, yeah, we start when employees are joining an organization. So before they are leaving, they are working in an organization. And while they are working, they are creating kinds of contents, starting with emails, creating documents in OneDrive and SharePoint, if we talk about the Microsoft 365. But of course, they also create documents and different contents in other systems. In Microsoft 365, they create Power Apps, Power Automate flows, different ways, forms, and yeah, probably that's not all. They create different kind of stuff. And yeah, we have to think about what happens after they are leaving, and what happens with all this content that was created, because we don't want to lose it.
Exactly. So if we take a look first at the Mocha framework. So this is called the Mocha framework. It's something that Microsoft came out with 2 years ago. They recently revised it, but it is their tool to see what application could you use for what process. I'm using this all the time for all my customers. And it starts with Julie. And Julie needs to do a bunch of things, or she wants to do a bunch of things. She wants to have that family life. She wants to make a difference. She wants to be an expert. So she's working very hard inside the company, and because she's working, she needs to do a bunch of things. Like her as an individual has skills, experiences, a mindset, KPIs that she needs to do, and there's all kinds of activities that she is doing. And for all those activities that she's doing, like managing her files, managing her time, tracking tasks, she is using a bunch of applications. She's using Office and Sway and Planner and Visio and all these kinds of applications just to do her individual work. And if we take a look at how that looks for not just Julie as an individual, but for the whole organization, where people work in teams on the one hand, or be part of a community on the other hand, we see a bunch of applications that a person can use, and where a person can actually leave a trail of information or some crumbs behind. Now, in the center, of course, is Julie, and at some point, Julie gets lucky. Julie wins the lottery, and she says to her boss, I'm gonna buy some bling bling. I'm gonna buy my house in Ibiza with a nice swimming pool. I'm getting out of here. So now, Julie's gonna leave the organization. What now?
Okay, that's not so good that she's leaving now. Yeah, so maybe we can just delete her user, and then probably everything's gone. But is this the right way to do it? You can switch to the next slide. So our goal is to ensure that intellectual property is maintained. So this means the content, maybe her personal content, is not so important, because the relevant content, the relevant things for the team, they are already transferred. But maybe it's not that way. Maybe she's keeping her stuff in her OneDrive, and it's information that is relevant also for the rest of the team. And that's our main purpose, to ensure that the intellectual property is maintained. And if we take a look on the offboarding process, let's see why is a good offboarding process so important, and what happens if we just delete the user. First of all, we lose content. For example, important emails. Maybe they have to stay compliant, and if we delete them, they're gone. Or like I've said before, OneDrive documents, and maybe also if Julie has some shared documents with other people, these documents are gone if we just delete everything, and that's not so good. We also use functionality. For example, our owned flows in Power Automate or owned apps. Also in the Power Platform. It's also for the connections in the Power Platform, because when you create in Power Platform some apps or flows, they are created some connections and they are owned by a person. That's also not so nice. And also forms in Microsoft Forms, they are running, they are owned by a person most of the time. And you will also lose governance. For example, if you're working in Microsoft Teams and Julie, for example, is owning a team, when she leaves the company, this team will not have an owner anymore. So this means no one can add or remove new users. And yeah, that's a very bad bottleneck. So we want to take a look on the aspects when we are offboarding employees. And first of all, we will take a look on the organizational steps. And after that, we will take a look on the technical steps. So when we talk about organizational steps, probably we could talk an hour about different topics and questions, but let's take a brief look on some important questions. And after that, we will move to the technical questions. Regarding governance questions, we want to define how long we want to keep content on OneDrive. Maybe you also want to inventorize and be able to report on who is the owner of a team or of a SharePoint site. And you also want to define who gets the ownership on apps and workflows in the Power Platform. So these are just some of the governance questions. And we also have some compliance questions. For example, what happens if the CEO quits? We have probably he has important emails that shouldn't be deleted and they are business critical. So what happens if you just delete the mailbox? Is it compliant or isn't it compliant? Probably it also depends a little bit on the company, on the compliance rules in the company, and also depends on the country where the company is located. We can also talk about legal hold topics. And it's the same also for other departments like the sales department, HR department. So you also need to clarify these compliance questions and how you handle all these topics. But let's not focus too much on the organizational questions because probably at the end we will also talk a little bit about them. And just take a short look on governance, and then we move to the technical steps.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
You want to take it? This one?
You can take it.
All right, cool. So actually, what we've seen with a bunch of companies is most organizations don't really think about offboarding, and they just do it on a case-by-case basis. A number of companies have been looking at offboarding, and they have some rules around it. For example, they changed how long they want to keep the OneDrive. So they said, okay, default 90 days. No, let's make it 1 year, for example, which is okay, that's fine. But what we actually really want to give to you, if there is one message that I want to give to you that you should remember tomorrow after this session, is think about the different roles and functions that people can have in your organization and what kind of offboarding that you want to do depending on that role and that function. So for example, if your secretary goes out of the company, that's okay. If we've got a senior manager leaving the company, okay, what do we want to do? If it's one of those HR persons, HR people where you can actually talk to and they can't say anything to other people about what you've been saying, like one of those trust people, do we just want to give that mailbox with all that very confidential and trustworthy information? Do we just want to give that to the follow-up person or to our colleagues or something like really think about all these functions and the roles that you might have and different aspects of the offboarding that you might want to take a look at. So that is my number one thing that I want to say to you, that you need to remember. Offboarding is not the same for everyone. So please think about what kind of roles you have and what kind of people are using specific information that you might want, need, or have to keep for a foreseeable time in the future. That's my number one thing that I want to give to you. Now, next up, how do we do that? So how do we do offboarding of a user? And we will first show you what we have out of the box. My keyboard's batteries are almost dead, I think, so I have to really push the keys very hard. Okay, so first of all, we are gonna look at what do we have out of the box. So out of the box, and I'm gonna demo this in an instant, you can just delete the user, super easy to, okay, delete the user. So no questions asked, and that will take you through a little wizard that will clean up the mailbox or give other people access to a mailbox. It will do some things around OneDrive. It will release the license and then delete the user in Active Directory, and then it will go to the deleted people in Active Directory. So there's a really nice little wizard that you can run through. Now, of course, if you're a geek like us, you can do all that with PowerShell. We are not going to demo PowerShell. There are tons of really good scripts out there. If you want to try it for yourself, you can just find a lot of good scripts. You can also use specific tools to do this as well if you want to. Now, okay, I'm just gonna click through it then. My little demo on how to delete the user, just default Office 365. So I'm just gonna jump to my Office 365 environment. I've got my list of active users, and here I've got this specific user that is going to leave the company. So I can say that I want to delete this user. And here I've got that little wizard that can bring me through a bunch of things. So I can see any specific email aliases that have been set up, specific mailbox delegate permissions that have been set up. There's a question what to do with the OneDrive. So for this one on my tenant, I've set it up for 30 days. So here I can actually say, okay, just give me access to this person's OneDrive after this user is deleted. And then the last one is I actually want to give other people access to this person's mailbox. Now that will bring me to another little wizard. Let's get rid of that. So here I can actually say, okay, what this is going to do by default is it's going to save this mailbox as a group email box, so that you can actually say, okay, Julie's mailbox, we're actually going to give 3 people of her team access to her mailbox so that they can all go through the mailbox, see if there's nothing that we need to keep, and then we can get rid of it. So you can add a single person right now, but of course, then it will create that shared mailbox, and then you can add more people in there. So I can just add a person here. Let's say I also want to give that to me. How does that shared mailbox need to look like? Do I want to give it like a special name, something like Lloyd Lee shared, something like that? Also important, if people are gonna email Julie or Lloyd in this case, they don't know that she's gone. So we kind of want to let those people know. So what we need to do is we need to turn on automatic replies so that those people get a nice message back saying, look, Julie doesn't work here anymore, but you can contact John or whoever from the same team, and they will have all the information that you need. Lastly, if there are any email aliases set up, you can also get rid of those. And then in the end, you can actually finish and transfer ownership, and then everything will go through. The person will be deleted. The license will be stripped away. This is a very easy, non-obtrusive process that just takes you 2 minutes to run through. If you don't automate it, if you don't do anything special with it. So as we said already, the one of the biggest parts is to actually think about what needs to happen with that mailbox, what needs to happen with that OneDrive information, what needs to happen with a bunch of other things. Yeah? So that is the important bit here. Now, if we jump back to our slides, we are actually going to show you a better way to do this. This is the out-of-the-box thing that Microsoft gives you. So just next, finish kind of way. And the problem is, this talks about the mailbox. This talks about OneDrive. This will strip the license. This will delete the user. But we've got other content that is also flowing around. We saw that on the Mocha framework in the earlier slides. There's so much content that person creates, so many things that person does, that we also need to take care of. Forms that this person created. So you will definitely see Julie is the one that created that little form on the main page of our intranet. She was the one. So if she goes away, now that is going to go into an error. So that's going to give a nasty, ugly error code on the page, or giving you the message that the form cannot be found, because when Julie is gone, her form is gone. Sways that Julie created, maybe newsletters that you keep in an archive, in a Sway archive, they will be gone as well. What about Julie's personal lists that she might have shared with other people, where other people might be collaborating on her personal list that is stored in OneDrive as well? But on the other hand, we also have, as Corinna just said, we've got business content here. So what if she's the only owner of a team? Of course, you can ask IT to, hey, we don't have any owners anymore. Could you assign an owner? Yeah, if she's the only owner and she's gone, then that's going to be horrible. Power Platform, same thing. If things run under her name, they will not run anymore. So, for example, what if you've got an email coming in with specific invoices? I once had that when I was working for a bank. We had invoices for gold transfer coming in, and we had a workflow that would automatically drop those invoices as a PDF in a SharePoint library, so that the team would just know which ones that they needed to pay. Now, at some point, that person left the company. That workflow didn't happen anymore, so they didn't see any new invoices. So the problem was that those invoices were not getting paid, so they had to pay costs on those invoices, like negligence costs. Now, if you think about banks and how they transfer gold, we are talking about invoices with lots of zeros, with lots of digits on there. And if you have to pay like a 2 or 3% fine for not paying on time, that is talking about a lot of money. So that was a business critical issue that could have cost that bank a lot of money if we didn't see it on time. Yeah. So those things are a problem if you don't take a look at it. So this content will not be there after you delete the user. Oh, whoops.
So yeah, like Maureen said, there is a better way to do that. And of course, at some point, probably you want to delete that user, but not as soon as Julie has left the company. So you have to take it step by step. First of all, you should reset the user's password, or to block the sign in and initiate a sign out. also regarding mobile devices and so on. Then you need to remove company data from devices and mobile devices. You can change the mailbox to a shared mailbox and also set an out of office message. After that, you need to give access to OneDrive to the right people, and also to check if other services are running by the account, Power Apps, Power Automate, and so on. And only after you've done these steps, you should think about deleting the user and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's go through these steps. So the first step is if somebody is leaving the organization, we want to make sure that they cannot log on anymore, that they cannot go through the documents and chat to people. Maybe that offboarding wasn't as graceful. Maybe that person did something wrong and we needed to push her out of the building. We needed to escort her out of the building and make sure that she can't see anything anymore. So in order to do that, there are two ways to do this. The first one is to reset the password so that that person, when they try to log in, they just get the sign that you've got the wrong password. You could also block their sign-in, which is the second option here, so that they can't sign in anymore. It's kind of a best practice, while the reset password is a Microsoft recommendation. Also, hit that sign out of all sessions button. Otherwise, they might still be logged on. Maybe they're still logged on their phone, on their tablet, on their whatever device. So they might still see all that stuff while that reset or that block hasn't been pushed to that user's device yet. So that's an important one. Make sure that they can't access the tenant anymore. Now, what is important here is make sure that that self-service password reset is not enabled. One of the super useful functionalities is, oh, I can't remember my password anymore. Let me enable my password with some MFA kind of trick. Now, of course, if we are changing that user's password, they can't log in anymore. They'll just go, okay, I'll just reset my password and then I'm back in. So make sure that that self-service password reset is not enabled. Otherwise, that would just be silly, of course. Now, the next step that you want to do, now that they can't see the information anymore, now that they can't log in anymore, is you want to remove company data from all of their devices that you might have. So this is Intune, Endpoint, SCCM kind of things. There are a bunch of user interfaces where you can do that, either from Azure, Microsoft 365. So wipe that data from their devices. Now, you also need to think about unmanaged devices. So, for example, if you get an E3 license, you can install Office on up to 5 different devices. Now, a lot of people already or also do that. Definitely before Corona, when they wanted to work from home in the evening, but they didn't have a laptop, they just had a desktop. They also want to install Outlook and stuff like that so that they could, if they wanted to, work a little bit in the evening. They have a smartphone that might not be registered in the company. They might have a tablet where they're using OneDrive synced files, things like that. So think about how you want to manage that as well. The next step, now that they can't log in anymore, now that their data is wiped, we need to see or think about what we want to do with that email. So first thing, activate automatic replies and give other people access to the mailbox. So if the mailbox is less than 50 gigabytes, you can change it into a shared mailbox. The nice thing about that is that you don't have to pay for a license. So for example, if 10 people left the company, you can just create 10 shared mailboxes. You don't have to pay for 10 licenses anymore. Really useful if you're a small organization that really needs to make every penny count, then that is definitely a good way. And then optionally as well, or on the other hand, what you could also do if you don't want to give people access to the mailbox is you want to set up an incoming email rule. So every time somebody sends an email to that mailbox, it will automatically be transferred to other people in the team so that they don't have to look at that mailbox, but they can just see it in their own. Now, you need to make sure that you think about your privacy here as well around GDPR. What is in the contracts that you create with your users? Does it say anything about when you leave the company, this is what we will do with your company data? Because email and OneDrive as well should only contain business data, but we all know that there will be personal emails on there. There will be personal documents in OneDrive. So make sure that you really take a look at or think about what is the contract that we have with people. How did we sell OneDrive? How do we sell this Outlook system or Office 365 to our users? Do we really say, no, this is just about business business documents and business email, and we will take a look at it? Otherwise, there might be some union problems if we're talking about big organizations, if you don't really specify what you're gonna do when a person has left the organization. Now, also a very useful thing if you want to keep that mailbox open for quite some time, hide that mailbox from the address list so that people can't look that person up and they can't send emails there if you are not planning to delete the account. So now that we've handled email, we could also take a look at OneDrive. So what you typically want to do is you want to give other people access to the OneDrive of that person. Now, what you could also do, and I know a few customers that also do that, is they just say, okay, we've got a big network drive sitting here in the office. And what we will do is when somebody leaves our organization, we'll just grab a copy of that OneDrive and we'll just put it on that cloud drive or that little drive that we have here. And if somebody needs access to it, we can actually give them a USB stick or whatever and just give them those files if they want to. But most of the time, what you will probably want to do is give the OneDrive to the manager or to some team members. They can go through all the files and the folders that are there, and they can then take action, save the files that they want to save, or get rid of everything else. Now, there are a few things that you need to think about. Now, the easiest one to think about is how long do you want to keep that content available? Yeah, we'll talk about that. The other hand, what you also want to take a look at is what are we going to do with the shared documents that we store in OneDrive? So if I'm storing files in OneDrive, I can share my Excel file or my Word document with Corina. And that works. That's a brilliant functionality. But if I'm going away and my OneDrive is deleted, then Corina doesn't have access to that file anymore. So think about how you want to make sure that that doesn't cause any problems, that doesn't cause any issues. Make sure that everyone saves important documents on SharePoint instead of on OneDrive. But that should be part of your offboarding as well. Now, how does that look like if you give somebody else access to OneDrive? They'll just get an email saying, look, you've got access to this person's OneDrive. And if you just follow that link, then you can just go there. And of course, there are a bunch of, few governance things that you can set up. So if you go to OneDrive or SharePoint Admin Center, you can actually say how long do we want to keep that OneDrive. So that can go from 30 days to 10 years, 3,650 days. That's the maximum. So 10 years is that's a lot.
Okay, so let's take a look on other services. As we have different services, let's start with forms. So in forms, let's say it depends on how you create forms. So normally, if you go on the forms website and you create a form, it's your personal form. And if you're leaving the company, then someone needs to have access to that form. And that's a little bit tricky because there's a special link you can access a form for a former employee. And with this link, then you can change the ownership to another person. If you're creating forms from Microsoft Teams, now you're already able to create team forms, and these forms are then owned by the team. But yeah, it's not always the case that an employee is creating the form from the team, and some users, they don't know, and they just create it directly in forms, and then yeah, the ownership is missing. And for example, I had a customer, the employee has done a survey, and yeah, they had a lot of responses. I don't know, about 100. Then the employee left the company, and he didn't share the responses of that survey. So they really needed to get access to the responses, and yeah, that's the way you can get access to the survey and the responses of the survey. And you also need to keep in mind that the surveys are kept only for 30 days after a user is deleted. Okay, yeah, that's a screenshot how it looks like, and then you can change the ownership in forms to the new user. Okay, other services, Power Platform. Yeah, I think that's a really big topic. We will just go a little bit on it. So first of all, the creator of a flow or app has ownership on it, like we've already said before, and all connectors are running on that account. We recommend you to run PowerShell to change the ownership, and you also need to change the connections, because if Julie is creating a flow, yeah, she is the owner of the flow, and all the connections, for example, send an email, create a document, all these connections are on her name, and you need to change the connections to the new owner. Yeah, but much better is also if you defined several owners. You can move to the next slide. Thank you. So you should define more than one owner when you create a flow or an app in Power Automate. And if you have business critical applications or flows, you can also use a service account for the creation of the flow and the app, and also for the connectors. And yeah, if you're having a service account, you don't have the issue that the service account is leaving the company because it's a service account. But you also need to be aware of, first of all, on licensing on premium connectors, but also if you're using a service account, you need to you also need to have a license on that user. So maybe it's one more license you need to take in account. Other tips regarding governance around Power Platform are you can define DLP policies. This means when the user is creating a flow, he has many connectors he can use, sending an email, downloading a document, and so on. And maybe you don't want to allow all connectors for all users. So you can define some DLP policies, and then you can say, okay, I don't want to let the normal user to use a specific connector. Yeah, that's the idea of the DLP policies. Then you can also use different environments in the Power Platform. So this means you can target different audiences. An example, you have an application from the HR department. Yeah, it's a really important business critical application, and this application takes more time to be developed, to be tested, and so on. And then you can set up different environments and have a specific environment for this application, and then you can test that application there. And last but not least, you can use analytics. You can also use the COE toolkit. That's a toolkit provided by Microsoft. You can download it and use it. And yeah, the main idea is, so these are a lot of tips, but it's very important to develop a strategy. And to develop a strategy, how you want to work, if you want to use different environments or not, to be aware of what happens if everyone can create everything, and to be aware how you can monitor all this stuff. Yeah, and it's also a matter of cost, because yeah, you have just a limit of certain flow runs, certain Power App runs, and yeah, it's important also to keep track on it. Okay. So that's a screenshot of the analytics in the Power Platform. I think they have, yeah, they have changed a little bit, but yeah, it looks like this. And if the analytics in Power Platform are not enough for you because you don't see all the information you need, there is the Power Platform COE toolkit on the next slide. And the Power Platform COE toolkit, like I've said, you can download it from the Microsoft website. It has 5 different component groups: core components, governance, nurture, theming, and components and innovation backlog. And for example, in the core components, you have a Power BI dashboard. It looks like the one you can see in the screenshot. And here you can also get information on the usage in the Power Platform, usage of apps, usage of workflows, and so on. And you can also, yeah, if you fit in Power BI, you can also just get this dashboard and improve it and adjust it, adapt it with the information you need. And you also have in this COE toolkit a lot of PowerShell scripts that you can also use and adapt them to the needs that you have. We also have linked it in the references, the link to the COE toolkit.
It's free to install.
Yeah. Okay, some further things you should be aware of. On-premise Active Directory. If you're still using an on-prem Active Directory, you need to keep in mind that if you delete or deactivate users in the on-prem, it takes about 30 minutes until it's also applied in the Azure Active Directory. So you should run the Azure Active Directory sync. If you're using Skype for Business or Teams, yeah, when users are deleted, the PSTN calling numbers will be released. So they will be again available for the next user that joins a company. And Microsoft lists. Microsoft lists are personal or shared lists, and they are stored in the user's OneDrive. Just keep aware of it. Okay. What about SharePoint and Microsoft Teams? So maybe Julie has created a lot of documents and content in SharePoint and Teams. So you don't have to worry about it, because SharePoint and Microsoft Teams are shared workspaces. So everything what is created there, it's the company's intellectual property. So it will not be deleted, it will be there. Everyone has access to that content. And that's why everything what is done in a team, in a group, should be done in SharePoint and Teams and not in OneDrive. Okay.
Good, cool. So a few steps that you can take just now, well, maybe not now, but let's say tomorrow, that you can do to improve the way you're offboarding your users. So talk to your governance board, put that offboarding on the table, get HR involved, get security involved, get the compliance people involved, and talk about what kind of things do you want to keep for how long when you're offboarding people. Now, just not any people, but also make those scenarios depending on what kind of person it is that's going to go away. So if you've got a plant manager that's moving out, okay, that's cool. What are we going to do with all this information? We've got an HR person that's going away. Okay, what are we going to do with all that information? If it's a senior manager, what are we going to do? Document that process. Take a look at it every year to see, is this still right? Is this still what we want? Things like that. So make this, put this on the table, discuss this. And then as well, make it easy for your people that also need to do this, need to run this. PowerShell is the magic key to IT happiness. So make sure that you automate wherever you can, of course. Now, as a little demo, there's an extra license that you can buy, which is not very cheap, but that handles the insider risk management. So what happens if I'm going to resign from a company is I will, and I'm going to go to the competition, for example, I will, of course, try to download as much documents as I can and then take it with me to the new competitor. Or I'm starting my own business, so I'm just grabbing all the files from my customers so that I know how to handle them and that they can always contact me. So maybe you want to do something about that. So that's what this insider risk management license does. You can set up policies so that you will be notified if something happens. If people are suddenly sharing a lot of SharePoint files with people from outside the organization, maybe you want to be notified about that. If people are downloading a bunch of content, if they're sending sensitive information in Teams messages to external people, maybe you want to be notified of that. So think about it. Think if this is something that you might need for your users, and there's an extra license involved, as I said. Now, to round up our session, here are a bunch of references. You will get the meeting recording, so you can always go back to the slides if you want to. Some takeaways here: the Power Platform Center of Excellence Kit, as Corinna already said, free download, really useful if you have a lot of those citizen developers in your organization doing all kinds of things. How do you want to keep them in check? Do the Center of Excellence installation. There are some things from Microsoft here on how to remove employees. There are some best practices around offboarding and how to do some PowerShell things here as well. Now, I just want to leave you with one thing. Please just be nice to the people that you work with, because they will offboard at some point. And when they go away, if they win the lottery, just like Julie, if they don't like you, they might do terrible things to your lawn or to your desk once they get out. So please, please, please just be nice to people. Just be straightforward, and then hopefully these things will not happen to you. So that's it for us. I'll give the session back to the nice people of Syskit, and they will give you a demo. Now we'll be back for some Q&A.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Marin. Thank you, Corina. This was an awesome presentation from your side. So yeah, remember everyone, if you have any questions, and I can see that we already have some, please ask them, submit if you have anything to ask to both Corina or Marin. And before we go to the Q&A session where we will be answering those questions, let's turn things over to Bojan, who is our Syskit software developer, and he's gonna do a quick demo on Syskit Point. Are you ready, Bojan?
Yeah, I think so. Never ready. Okay, thank you, Celio. Thank you, Corina and Marin, for a great presentation. My name is Bojan, and I'm just going to take a few moments of your time to show you how Syskit Point can help you improve offboarding experience and keep your Office 365 environment clean and tidy. Just to confirm, Celio, my presentation is visible, right? Everything is okay. You can see.
Yes, everything is okay.
Okay, great. So, first, few words about Point. So, Point is a comprehensive Office 365 governance solution, basically designed for administrator and business users to easily govern their workspace from a central point. So there is no need to go in multiple administrator centers or use PowerShell or any kind of scripting. You can use Point and get a nice UI to do your tenant management. Basically, Point manages with Office 365 inventory, access reporting, governance and policy enforcement, which are, as Corina mentioned, important because you should always keep track on how many owners of some content you have. Is it site, teams, or group, or whatever. Point also deals with lifecycle management and proactive security alerting and stuff like Marin mentioned about insider risks. So you can create also alerting for some events. But today we'll just concentrate on a few features that can help you with offboarding. So let's get started. First, we'll go to our user screen, where you can see users overview. Here we are able to filter our user on some filter groups like external users or sign-in blocked user, which are mentioned a few times today, or deleted users. And we can also execute some actions on those users regarding offboarding of users. So if we choose a user, we can see that there are some actions here that allows us to delete that user, to block sign in to that user. We can even do that actions in bulk, so it's easier to manage more users at once. There is also a nice feature called copy user permissions, which allows you to basically copy permissions of one user to another, or even remove permission from original user after they have been copied to a new one, in case you want to replace a user or change role to one of your user which handles something and it needs to have the same scope of permissions to do his job. Okay, if we go to user details, here we can see everything basically about this user and all content, business content, where user has permission. So in this corner, we can see all Microsoft Teams and group memberships, and we can easily, with just one click, remove this user from all groups, teams, and all business content where it has permissions. Same thing can be done with sites and sharing links and all other workflow which work in Point. Okay, this is for active user. Basically, we can do it before or after deletion. If we choose deleted user, so for example, this user was deleted, so we have option to restore it, or we can also clear some permissions that are left behind on some content after this user was deleted. Just a second. Okay, so basically we can do it even on deleted user. And what's more important here, after user has been deleted and we have OneDrive left behind, and we want to clear that content or give permissions to someone else to take charge of that, we can easily change permissions and administrator of that OneDrive. This is basically how you can deal with user permission and business content left behind user. There is one more thing I want to show in reports and regarding licenses. Basically, we have inactive licenses report, which shows all users which are inactive or have disabled sign-in. And you can easily remove licenses, so you don't need to pay for licenses which are not used after user has been disabled and it's not obviously using that license anymore. Basically, that was everything I wanted to show you today. I'm giving back control to Silvio. Thank you everyone for listening, and if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you, Bojan. It was a great, excellent presentation, but we expected not less than that. So now it's time for the Q&A session, so we can answer some of your questions. Unfortunately, we're a bit tight on time, so we're gonna pick just some of those. So yeah, Corina, Marin, Bojan, are you ready?
Yep, bring it.
Okay, I'm just gonna read them out, and then if you feel like this is for you, you can hop in. So yeah, the first one is, well, it's an interesting one. So granting people access to someone's mailbox, isn't that illegal? I believe this refers to your presentation.
Yeah, no, it's not illegal. By default, administrators will have access to your mailbox. So that's definitely something. Now, it is kind of like etiquette wise nice if you will also mention that somebody has access to your mailbox, but it's definitely not illegal. And also, yeah, it's perfectly explainable that if somebody goes away from the organization, that you need to do something with the content that's in there. So it's, yeah, you need to give somebody access to it.
Okay.
And
I think, Corina, you wanted to add on? Sure.
Yeah. For example, in Germany, it's indeed a little bit tricky, but it's also not illegal. So in Germany, if you sign a contract, it really depends what is written in there. Because if almost the contracts is written that you can use it also private, but when you leave the company, you need to sign that you deleted everything what is private, and then you don't have any private data, and you ensure that you don't have any private data anymore. And then, it's the intellectual property of the company and not yours. Yeah, but for example, here they are really very careful regarding the data. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both, Corina and Marin. I mean, if anyone has anything to add regarding this from the end users and watchers, feel free to type in some follow-up question. Okay, and the next we have is how can we make sure that all SharePoint permissions, just give me a second. How can we make sure that all SharePoint permissions and shared links of the offboarded users have been removed? I can read it again if you want.
PowerShell.
Yeah, or use Point. You can do that using Point. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then we have, actually, I'm gonna pick one because it's related. So besides PowerShell, is there an easier way to archive a deleted user's OneDrive?
Yes. There are a few things that you can do. So if you're the owner of that person's OneDrive, you could, for example, just mark everything and then say move to a SharePoint location, for example. So that might be maybe the easiest thing. You might also just mark everything and then just say delete, so that you've got a zip file with all those files on your computer, and then you can store it somewhere on a DVD or on a whatever other kind of solution. So it doesn't have to be very difficult.
I think the main point is that it shouldn't stay anymore on OneDrive, on any OneDrive.
Okay, and the last one I'm going to read, I mean, actually this just arrived. So can you please clarify what kind of permissions you manage under the features copy permissions? Do you manage teams/groups? I believe this is actually for Bojan, I would say, right? It sounds like it's related to demo.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So yeah, basically we are copying all permissions user had.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's yeah, we are basically 1 minute over time. So once again, I'm gonna thank you all for joining us on our today's webinar. I'm gonna thank our great guests here. I'm gonna thank Bojan. I mean, it was a pleasure having you all here, and you had to put up with me, which is not easy. So yeah, in the end, thank you everyone for coming. Everyone who has registered will receive a recording of this webinar within a few days, as I already said. And yeah, great presentations all around, great questions. And if you have any further questions for us regarding Syskit Point or any of our products, you can reach out to us at sales@syskit.com. Yeah, it was a pleasure hosting this, and see you all together next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.